Welcome to the next installment of Craptacular Engineering. I got a couple of things to highlight for today. I wish I didn't have to do this, but the bike is just fighting me. It's not the stuff I'm doing to it, it's like self-sacrifice. The first one is, you can see right here. This hole is where the key for locking the back seat used to be. And if I push it down, you can see that I now operate it by pulling this cable. That's because all the parts for the lock are now here. The magic one is the lock cylinder, and I had to put tape on it to hold the little pins in place so it doesn't fall over the street. But you can see, focus you fac, there's two holes in the back of the lock cylinder. These two holes match up with the two holes right here, and it's meant that when the lock cylinder turns, magic things happen and that cable gets pulled and the release goes. Well, those two screws fell out in the street somewhere, and then the next time I went to actually unlock the seat, the lock cylinder fell onto the ground. Took two motorbike shops for them to be able to disconnect it enough, and the guy got his finger up inside the hole and managed to pull the unlatch. So that's where we are today. I sent an email to the Toyotron lady in Bangkok expressing my unhappiness and simply asked her to send me two screws because I can reassemble this and put some Loctite on the threads. And she said, repairman come Saturday. So they're going to drive a guy all the way down from Bangkok on Saturday to rebuild this little section of the bike. I admire their commitment to customer service, but in this case it's unnecessary. Now, let's move on to a slightly more serious problem. This piece right here is the center kickstand to the bike. Normally, it goes right here. I'm gonna have to climb underneath. It goes right here, mounts to this little bracket here. There's one on this side and one on the other side. Now you can see I'm just moving it back and forth. There's a good half-inch gap from the mounting bracket to the two tabs that make up this thing. Each of these mounting brackets has a nut that's welded on to the back side of the bracket. The problem was the nuts that they supply that go through here, and into the nut, both the nut and the bolt, completely stripped. Let me get one of those. So here's the nut, or the bolt. See if we can get it in focus. You can see the second half of the threads are all chewed up, and it doesn't even go in here anymore. It just flaps around, and both the bolts fell out while I was working on the bike one day. So what I'm going to do is the kind of engineering that they should have done in the factory already, and let me show you how that's going to turn out. So I went to the local hardware store and bought some bolts. It's actually the same diameter and thread as the original one, but much longer, as you can see. What I intend to do is put a washer on the outside to facilitate the easy pivot of the bracket. Washers between the bracket and the mounting point I'll go through the mounting point and then double, with more washers as necessary, and then double nut the back side. That will lock the bolt in place so it will never come apart. I thought about putting some Loctite in, but the one kind of Loctite they have here seemed like it was essentially a welding machine in a plastic bottle. It said heat and tools required to disassemble. Now that's okay, although I might put a little tiny dab on, but I'm going to try the double nut and lock that on. That way we've got the side-to-side problem solved, and we have the threads getting mashed up, and just depending on the nut in the bracket, I'm going to go through a nut to secure it and then a nut to lock the first nut in place. So wish me luck. I'll show you how it looks when I'm done. Okay, I've got the center kickstand in place, bolted in tight with one bolt just to see how it works, and we have a problem. See that? I move the kickstand back and forth because the hole is so big in the kickstand bracket. It's larger than the bolt that came from the factory that I replaced with exactly the same bolt, only longer. And so this is bad when I'm driving down the road. Now that, from this vantage point, now I understand why I have another huge clunking noise under the bike when I go over a bump, and that's without even this in place. This hasn't been on the bike in 2 weeks. If we go here and we look at, this is the main bolt at the pivot point for the rear swing arm, I think it's called. There is no washer on this side or on the back side, and I can feel the gap back here with my fingertip between this tube and the bracket and this bolt. This is simply ridiculous. So it looks like I have to pull that bolt. I probably don't even have a wrench for it. Probably, yeah. It's too big. That's a 17. It's probably a 19 millimeter bolt. I got to pull that bolt and get a couple of washers for each side. Make sure to tighten it up and get rid of that banging sound as I drive down the road. And there's a similar sound in the front, of course, but I don't know what's wrong in there yet. I haven't looked. It sounds more like something's loose and rattling inside the front fairing, whereas this is definitely a clunky mechanical sound. So about this, I think what I have to do is take it apart, take it over to Abel with his welding machine, and we'll try and weld some more metal on the inside of the hole in this bracket so that it perfectly fits in this size bolt, and then reinstall it. Yeah, either that or get a bigger bolt. I'll have to measure that and see what it is. This is the biggest one my local home store has. I'll have to check. All right. Another day, another bit of craziness that I have to fix. Wish me luck. One thing I did want to mention is I was using the original, I don't know what these are called, it's some kind of spacer thing that's meant to make up for the size of the hole difference. But if you put it in here, it almost falls through. And it's got still a tremendous amount of gap, and the thing just bangs around inside the hole. There's an 1/8 of an inch of a gap that this thing's banging around. So I just checked with my buddy Abel, and he thinks we can weld these into place, lock them in solid, and then the bolt will perfectly fit in there with no slop, and we could potentially solve that problem. So let's get welding. Okay, welcome back. I had a rather successful outing. I stopped over at Abel's and he welded those inserts in for me. Just beautiful. I came back and just did a very light grinding on them to give them a solid flat spot for the washer to rub up against. And then I went down to the mall and found a cell phone repair guy with a really nice microscope and all the proper surface mount repair components, and he fixed the JevQ. He's my new best friend, Kun Tong. $10 for the repair. No, not even that, like $6. So we'll have to see. But so now let's get this puppy back on the bike. Well, will you look at that? The bolts are in. They're not even tight yet, just nice and snug, and there is no movement because that spacer welded in is doing the job. There's direct metal on metal contact, so I have to put a big piece of rubber on that to stop that banging around, but the bracket itself is beautiful. So now just snug it up so I still have some play, double nut it, and we are done. Gentlemen, welcome back to the remains of the wife's sewing room. In this video, the 200-pound gorilla will show how I fixed the Jesus thing, or at least close enough for the girls with suspiciously big hands, low voices, and bad attitudes that I hang around with. Now hold my beer while I don my safety squints and apply some slight adjustments with the thumb detector. Focus, you fack. There. As I mentioned in the previous video clip, I went down to the local version of the Homeless Despot and got some skookum threaded fasteners. Mucho grande better than the originals, and not just what for style points either. A delicate application of Loctite in the double nut, just the tip mind you, will keep her skookum as frig. See how she goes up and down? Just the right amount of friction to keep her happy. No clunks, bangs, or rattles. Now let me pop it up on the stand. Now we're chooching. Keep your dick in a vise. Okay, I unbolted and pulled the shaft, this giant bolt holding the swing arm in place to the frame of the motorbike. It's a 19mm socket and dry as a bone. There is no lubrication whatsoever in this very important pivoting point of the motorbike. And if you look up here, this is approximately where it goes, and we have a little bit of play between the swing arm and the frame pivot points. So I went down the street to some very helpful guys with a hole-in-the-wall motorcycle shop, bought 4 washers that fit this bolt. I bought a tube of grease, and we're going to properly set this guy up, tighten her down, and get her back into the shape she should have come from the factory. Yeah. Okay, got the big bolt back in, washer on the inside of the bracket on each side, washer on the outside of the bracket on each side. Got the nut back on. I was going to put some Loctite on it, but I realized that the nut actually has some kind of a locking system on the end, and I caught a couple of threads worth on it. So I'm just going to leave it and keep an eye on it. If it seems like it's coming loose, I'll put some Loctite on it. So let's give it a shake and see what happens, see if we have any clunking. Well, it sounds good. I'm flexing the swing arm, not getting any clunking. That's a really good sign. So I'm going to take it for a spin around the parking lot a few times and see how it sounds, and that'll be it for the day. Well, I was at my condo meeting this morning. They drove all the way down from Bangkok and they fixed the seat lock. Look at that. And they also replaced the matching lock here so that there's only one key needed for the bike, which was very awesome of them. They also worked underneath the front fender and fixed whatever the issue was there, because with the work they did up front and the work I did in the rear suspension, this thing just sounds silent. No squeaks, no bumps, no rattles. I'm so happy right now. Alright, that's it for today. Here's a special treat for you. I recorded this with my motorbike cam coming home from my local hardware store. It's a back road, really not great road maintenance here, but the highlight is coming across Grandma in her electric tricycle machine. Alert viewers will remember when I was trying to work with this company called UDA to buy their electric scooter, and they refused to do it, and I figured out in the end it's just because they didn't ever register that model with the government as an on-road vehicle. Notice Grandma trundling down the road, not a care in the world, no license plate. So I'm thinking Grandma doesn't give a fuck. She's just doing her thing.